More than 6,000 people are now dead and 11,000 injured in the Iranian protests. The U.S.-based human rights activist news agency also says more than 4,000 people have been arrested since the demonstrations started last month.
When mass protests erupt under authoritarian rule, they expose fear on both sides. Fear among citizens who risk everything by showing up, and fear among regimes that know crowds can turn into revolutions. Iran, China, and Russia have all faced moments when streets filled, slogans sharpened, and the question of survival suddenly felt real. Yet none of these regimes fell. Understanding why requires looking closely at how repression, co-optation, narrative control, and elite loyalty are used together, especially during the most dangerous moments when things could have tipped out of control. Across Iran, China, and Russia, the survival of authoritarian regimes during mass protests follows a shared rhythm that becomes visible once events are traced step by step rather than explained abstractly. Protests explode suddenly. The state absorbs the shock. Violence is applied unevenly but decisively. Small pressure valves are opened to drain momentum. The story is reshaped relentlessly and, most importantly, elites are reminded that defection is far more dangerous than loyalty. In Iran, this rhythm has played out repeatedly, but the 2022-2023 uprising after the death of Mahsa Amini showed it in its rawest form. The protests spread faster than the regime expected, reaching dozens of cities within days, fueled by rage not just at compulsory hijab laws, but at decades of humiliation, corruption, and economic decline.
This photograph of her parents learning of their daughter's death went round the world. The journalist who took it, now in prison. Shortly after, anger spread from Mahsa's home region of Kurdistan, and a movement emerged, especially among students. Crowds of women removing their hijabs, some going so far as to burn them, all in protest against the Iranian morality police.
What made the moment especially threatening was that fear visibly cracked. Schoolgirls tore down portraits of Supreme Leader Ali Khamenei. Oil workers briefly walked out. And slogans no longer demanded reform, but openly called for the end of the Islamic Republic. The state's response was not a single, overwhelming crackdown, but a layered campaign.
Faced with growing unrest, the Supreme Leader Ali Khamenei made this statement.
This incident happened. A young girl died. It was a bitter incident. We were also upset.
Arrest numbers climbed rapidly, and it is estimated a total of 20,000 were detained over these protests.
Besieged militias and security forces flooded neighborhoods at night. Arrests targeted people randomly to create uncertainty, and lethal force was concentrated in peripheral regions like Kurdistan and Baluchistan, where the regime calculated violence would generate less sympathy from the Persian-speaking urban middle class. Executions were staged quickly and publicly, not to punish specific crimes, but to restore fear across society. At the same time, the regime quietly softened enforcement in certain areas. Morality police presence faded in parts of Tehran. Officials spoke vaguely about mistakes, and state media allowed controlled criticism that blamed low-level enforcers rather than the system itself. This combination mattered because it split the protest coalition. Some people felt terrorized. Others felt just enough relief to step back. Throughout all of this, narrative control hammered a single message. The protests were not organic, but orchestrated by foreign enemies, separatists, and cultural corruption. Even if many Iranians did not fully believe this, the message worked on older generations, rural populations, and conservative families who feared civil war more than repression. Most crucially, elite loyalty never wavered. The Revolutionary Guards, who dominate Iran's economy and security apparatus, understood that regime collapse would mean trials, asset seizures, and revenge. Clerical elites, though divided privately, closed ranks publicly. Once it became clear that no powerful faction would defect, the protest movement, despite its courage, slowly lost momentum. A quick side note. If you like what we're doing and would like to see more videos like this, please don't forget to like this video and subscribe our channel. Now, back to the video. China's experience shows a different surface style, but the same underlying logic, refined through decades of learning. The Chinese Communist Party treats mass protest as a governance problem rather than a moral or ideological crisis, and this mindset shapes its responses. The 1989 Tiananmen Square protests remain the clearest example of brute survival through force, but later episodes reveal how repression has become more targeted and less visibly catastrophic. During the 2019-2020 Hong Kong protests, Beijing faced a situation that looked genuinely dangerous. Millions marched repeatedly, police control wavered, slogans openly rejected Communist Party rule, and international attention was intense. Instead of sending tanks immediately, Beijing waited, letting exhaustion and internal divisions weaken the movement. Police repression escalated gradually. Tear gas clouds became routine, arrests mounted, court cases dragged on, while state media depicted protesters as violent rioters destroying their own city. Inside mainland China, alternative narratives barely existed. Most citizens never saw peaceful marches, only edited clips of chaos. Once momentum slowed, Beijing moved decisively through law rather than spectacle. The national security law criminalized dissent so broadly that opposition politics became legally impossible overnight. Co-optation followed quietly. Business elites were reassured. International firms were told stability would return, and local officials were rewarded for compliance. A similar pattern appeared during the 2022 Zero-COVID protests, when rare political slogans echoed in Shanghai and Beijing after deadly lockdowns. The party reacted with surprising flexibility. Restrictions were lifted soon after, allowing the leadership to frame policy change as a wise adjustment rather than a concession to protest. Behind the scenes, however, participants were identified, questioned, detained, or silenced individually, preventing the formation of a lasting protest network. Elite loyalty remained absolute because the party made one thing unmistakably clear: no one inside the system would be punished for enforcing order, but anyone wavering would risk their entire career and freedom. The lesson absorbed by society was subtle but powerful. Protest might accelerate decisions already under consideration, but it would never decide who rules. Russia's trajectory reveals yet another variation, shaped by cynicism, selective repression, and the personalization of power around Vladimir Putin. Early protest waves in 2011-2012 challenged election fraud and briefly rattled the Kremlin, but the response was careful rather than explosive. Police cracked down, but mass killings were avoided. Instead, laws were tightened, protest leaders were targeted, and state media mocked demonstrators as spoiled urban elites disconnected from real Russia. Over time, repression deepened. Alexei Navalny's anti-corruption movement posed a more serious threat because it connected economic anger with political outrage, drawing large crowds across multiple cities. The state responded by escalating gradually: arrests, poisoned attacks, long prison sentences, and finally, the designation of Navalny's network as extremist, making even association criminal. After the 2022 invasion of Ukraine, protests against the war erupted. Despite immense risk, the Kremlin responded with ruthless clarity. Anti-war speech became treason, media outlets were shut down overnight, and thousands were detained.
Я уже ничего не боюсь. Самое ценное, что они могут у нас отнять, это жизнь детей.
Narrative control shifted into total war mode. Russia was portrayed as defending itself against NATO, dissenters as traitors helping foreign enemies. Co-optation played a quieter role through selective economic stability. Pensions were paid, wages in key sectors rose, and regions loyal to the center received funding. Elite loyalty was constantly reinforced. Oligarchs learned that wealth abroad offered no protection at home, while security forces were expanded, praised, and rewarded. When mobilization protests flared in places like Dagestan, the state moved fast. Local leaders were reshuffled, police flooded the streets, and protest videos were buried under patriotic messaging. The Kremlin avoided mass slaughter not because it feared moral backlash, but because unpredictability worked better. People never knew how harsh the response would be, and that uncertainty paralyzed collective action. Seen together, these cases show that authoritarian survival during mass protests is less about eliminating anger and more about preventing coordination and elite fracture. Repression works not by convincing people, but by isolating them. Co-optation works not by solving root problems, but by offering exhausted citizens a way to disengage without openly surrendering. Narrative control doesn't require belief. It only needs to generate confusion, doubt, and division. Elite loyalty ties everything together. As long as those with guns, money, and administrative power believe the system's collapse would destroy them personally, they will enforce order, no matter how unpopular it becomes. What looks like resilience from the outside is often a tense balance held together by fear, habit, and lack of alternatives, where protests erupt, shake the system, and then are slowly absorbed rather than allowed to become decisive breaks. Iran, China, and Russia demonstrate that authoritarian regimes survive mass protests not because they are loved or stable, but because they are skilled at managing moments of danger. By combining selective violence, limited concessions, overwhelming narrative control, and unwavering elite loyalty, they turn explosive uprisings into contained episodes. The anger that fuels protests never fully disappears. It lingers beneath the surface. But without elite fractures or sustained coordination, even the largest crowds struggle to transform outrage into regime change. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe our channel.